The night tore open with a sound no one should ever hear. The wind moaned through the rotted boards as Ethan Caldwell whispered, "It's under us, Laura." His voice trembled like the lamp's flame that flickered against the cabin wall. The old wooden floor pulsed faintly beneath their boots, dust rising with each slow breath of the unseen thing below. Laura Caldwell said, "You're imagining it again," but her hand refused to leave the shotgun. Outside, the trees bent, though there was no wind. Inside, the air grew heavy, tasting of damp soil and rust. Ethan knelt, pressing his ear to the floor. Something exhaled back, long, wet, patient. It sounded almost human, but deeper, older. The boards creaked as if straining against something pushing upward. Laura stepped back, whispering, "Don't move." Then silence, except for the faint heartbeat that wasn't theirs. Ethan reached for the lantern, its light trembling as he lifted a loose plank, and the breath stopped. Morning brought no comfort. The cabin's floor was still damp where Ethan had lifted the plank. Laura stood by the window, watching fog drift through the trees. Ethan said it wasn't a dream. Something was down there. She didn't answer. The silence between them felt thicker than the mist outside. He walked out, flashlight in hand, searching beneath the cabin's crawl space. The ground there was disturbed, claw marks dragged through the mud. Something had moved under them during the night. Laura called out, "Ethan, stop digging." But he didn't. His hand brushed something soft buried in the soil. Hair, not human. The smell hit him, raw and sour. The earth exhaled again. He stumbled back as a low hum vibrated through the air. By afternoon, Ethan drove into town. The small diner buzzed with gossip. He told Sheriff Mark Reynolds what he'd found. "Probably a raccoon," the sheriff said, not meeting his eyes. But Ethan's voice cracked. "It breathed, Mark. It was alive." The sheriff laughed, hiding unease. At the next table, an old man named Harold Finch stopped stirring his coffee. "You should left the floor closed," Harold murmured. "Things down there don't like the light." The diner went still. Ethan stared, heart pounding. Harold added softly, "They wake when someone listens." That night, Laura refused to sleep. She sat by the fire, shotgun beside her knees. Every crack from the wood made her flinch. Outside, something brushed against the cabin wall. "Ethan?" she called. No reply. She rose, checking each window. Then she heard it again, slow breathing beneath her feet. This time louder. The flames wavered. She whispered his name again, voice breaking. The floor shifted slightly, dust trembling. She stepped back, gripping the shotgun. The whispering breath turned into a faint growl. Ethan returned at dawn with mud on his hands. "There's a tunnel," he said, eyes hollow. Laura backed away. He looked changed, skin pale, voice distant. "It's breathing from the earth itself." She wanted to believe he was just exhausted. But the smell followed him in damp, metallic, he whispered. "I think it's older than us." The wind outside died. Beneath their feet, the boards groaned once, as if answering him. Ethan Caldwell ran through the trees, flashlight bouncing wildly as thunder rolled across the hills. Behind him, the sound came again, wet, dragging, like lungs scraping wood. Laura Caldwell shouted, "Stop running!" But he didn't. Branches slapped his face, the forest floor soft with rain. The creature's breathing grew louder, steady, hunting. Ethan turned, sweeping the beam across empty space. "It's following us," he said, voice cracking. Laura gasped. "We need to reach the road." Lightning flashed, and for a second something massive moved between the trees. Tall, hunched, eyes burning red. The light flickered out. Darkness swallowed them. The ground trembled as if something huge shifted beneath it. Ethan reached for Laura's hand, but his fingers caught only air. Hours later, the rain softened into a whisper. They found refuge inside an old ranger outpost. The walls smelled of dust and fuel. Ethan dropped beside the fireplace, soaked and trembling. Laura whispered, "Do you still think it's real?" He nodded slowly. "It's hunting us." She looked toward the boarded window, where faint scratches carved the wood. The radio on the desk crackled once, then hissed. Ethan stared at it as if expecting a voice. "Maybe it's trying to talk," Laura said softly. He shook his head. "No, it's warning us." Outside, the forest exhaled again, a long sigh that made the glass hum. By morning, they returned to the cabin, but something had changed. The floorboards were torn open from below. Mud streaked the walls. In the center lay Sheriff Mark Reynolds' badge, half buried in damp soil. Laura whispered, "He came here," Ethan said. "No, it came for him." A deep thud echoed beneath them, slow, deliberate. The boards shuddered. Laura stumbled backward. Then a voice, distant but human, called from under the floor. "Help me." Ethan froze. It was Mark's voice, but wrong, stretched like a recording played backward. The sound ended with a crack of wood and a breath that shook the walls. That evening, Ethan followed the trail to the old mining road, where Harold Finch waited by a rusted truck. The old man said, "You stirred it, son. The thing under the floor isn't new. It's part of the ground," Ethan demanded. "What is it?" Harold's eyes glimmered. "A guardian that forgot its purpose." He handed Ethan a torn map, marked with black ink. "This tunnel leads to its den." Laura arrived breathless, fear etched on her face. "We should leave." Harold's voice broke. "You can't. Once it breathes your name, it won't stop." The wind howled, carrying something that almost sounded like Ethan's voice whispering back. The night came fast. The wind carried the same rhythmic breath I'd heard beneath the cabin. Ethan studied the map under the flashlight's beam. "It ends near the ridge," he said. Laura whispered, "You can't go there." He looked at her, weary but resolute. "If I don't, it will find us again." She reached for his hand, trembling. "Then we face it together." He nodded, fear and determination colliding in his eyes. The ground beneath their boots gave a faint shudder, as if agreeing. Somewhere in the dark, a low growl echoed, not a threat, but an invitation. Ethan said, "Let's finish this." The morning light cut through the fog, golden and deceptive. Ethan Caldwell and Laura Caldwell reached a ranger checkpoint, where Officer Daniel Hart waved them in. "You're safe now," he said, leading them inside a concrete shelter. The place felt too quiet. A faint hum came from the floor vents. Laura sighed. "Finally, someone believes us. I believe in keeping people calm." He poured them coffee, hands shaking slightly. Ethan noticed a mud stain on his boots, fresh like the kind found near the cabin. He said, "You've been there." Daniel looked away. "I've seen what's under that floor," he whispered. His voice cracked like the wood that first betrayed them. The hours passed in uneasy quiet. Daniel fixed the radio, tuning through static. Laura sat by the window, whispering, "Maybe it's over." Ethan shook his head. "No, it's waiting." Daniel finally spoke. "What you heard under that floor, some call it the breather." His words hung heavy. Laura asked softly, "You've seen it?" He hesitated. "I've helped hide it." The silence was thunder. Ethan stood, anger flaring. "You knew." Daniel's hand brushed the holster unconsciously. "I kept people safe." Laura stepped between them, eyes wet. "Safe from what?" Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. "From knowing too much." The radio crackled. A low breathing sound filled the room. Night crept in, heavy with rain. Daniel led them outside toward his truck. "We're leaving before dark," he said, but the forest was whispering again. Ethan stopped, scanning the tree line. "It's here?" Daniel grabbed his arm. "Don't listen to it," Laura frowned. "You said it wanted to be hidden." Daniel looked haunted. "It's not hunting you. It's calling you home." The ground shivered as if answering him. Ethan stared, disbelief breaking his voice. "You think it's alive?" Daniel nodded. "It's part of this land." "You woke it." Thunder cracked. Something moved under the road, rippling the gravel like breath. The betrayal came without warning. Daniel shoved Ethan toward the truck, locking him inside. Laura screamed, pounding the window. "What are you doing?" Daniel shouted back. "It wants him, not you." The ground split open behind them, boards of earth lifting as air roared from below. Ethan slammed the door open, shattering glass. Daniel drew his gun, trembling. "I'm sorry." He fired once, not at Ethan, but at the ground, trying to stop the rising shape. The shot echoed. A massive clawed hand broke through the dirt, dragging Daniel down in one sudden pull. Laura froze, tears streaking her face. Ethan whispered, "It took him." The forest exhaled again, louder, hungrier. After the earth swallowed Daniel, silence fell heavy as fog. Laura knelt, trembling beside Ethan. "We should run," she whispered. But Ethan stared at the spot where the ground had closed. "No," he said. "It didn't kill him. It claimed him." She backed away, terrified. "What do you mean?" Ethan's eyes glowed faintly in the dark, reflecting the lightning above. "It's been breathing through me since that night." Laura shook her head, voice cracking. "You're lying." He looked at her with sorrow. "You'll hear it soon, too." The wind rose, carrying that same deep, steady breath, and this time it came from both of them. Dawn came quiet and hollow. The forest seemed emptied of life, the air too still. Laura Caldwell walked beside Ethan Caldwell, who stared at the broken earth where Daniel had vanished. Smoke from the soil rose like faint breath. "You're not yourself," Laura said softly. Ethan's eyes traced the cracks in the ground. "Maybe I never was." The morning light caught on his face, pale, unblinking. Each inhale echoed faintly, as though the forest breathed with him. Laura whispered, "What did it do to you?" He looked toward the horizon, voice low. "It didn't change me. It remembered me." The ground pulsed once, weak but alive. For the first time, Ethan didn't flinch. The truth bled through memory. Ethan remembered the night he rebuilt the cabin floor last winter. The faint whisper he thought was wind, the breath that answered his hammer strikes. He saw flashes, Sheriff Mark Reynolds warning him about the hollow ground, Harold Finch telling stories of a thing that traded voices for safety. In the present, Laura whispered, "You opened it." Ethan nodded slowly. "And it opened me." The smell of damp soil filled the air. A faint hum vibrated through the trees, low, familiar. The creature hadn't been trapped under their home. It had been bound to his family long before. "It wasn't just under the floor," he said. "It was under our name." Later that day, they reached the ridge tunnel Harold had marked. The wind from within carried whispers that formed Ethan's name. Laura said, "We can't go inside." He turned to her, "Calm now. We already are inside it." The walls breathed. Slow, rhythmic. He walked ahead, hands grazing the damp rock. A voice echoed from deeper within, one that matched his own. "Ethan Caldwell," it said. "You remember." The sound wasn't threatening. It was mournful. He trembled. "You're not a monster," he whispered. "Your memory." The cave answered with a shudder like a sigh. Laura reached for him, terrified, but he smiled faintly, as if recognizing himself in the darkness. Inside the cavern's heart, the shape took form, tall, shadowed, with eyes like smoldering coals. The creature's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "You carried me for generations," it said, voice deep as the earth. Ethan whispered, "Why?" The voice replied, "To keep me alive." Laura gasped, stepping back. The creature's outline mirrored Ethan's, movement perfect. "You are my echo," it said. Ethan's knees weakened. "We built our homes above you," he said slowly, "to bury the truth." The creature's breath shook the ground. "And every generation forgets." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. "Then I remember for all of them." The darkness paused, as though bowing in acknowledgement. Ethan knelt before the creature, chest rising with the same rhythm as its breath. "So, this was the truth all along," he said softly. "You weren't beneath the floor. You were the floor." Laura cried out, "Ethan, stop." But he was calm, serene. "It's not evil," he said. "It's forgotten." The air pulsed gently, lifting dust into glowing spirals. Ethan reached out and placed his hand on the ground. The hum quieted. "It doesn't want to hunt," he said, eyes closing. "It wants to be heard." Laura watched as the light from the creature faded, its breath merging with Ethan's until there was only silence and understanding. The air thickened before the storm broke. Deep within the cavern, every breath echoed like thunder in waiting. Laura Caldwell held her flashlight tightly, its beam shaking across the stone. Ethan Caldwell stood still, his face lit by the pulsing glow beneath the floor. "It's coming," he whispered. The walls shuddered with rhythmic breaths, rising faster. Laura said, "Then stop it." His eyes narrowed. "It's not trying to kill us." The light flickered red, heartbeat loud in their ears. The ceiling cracked. A sudden silence fell. So pure it screamed. Laura gasped. "Ethan, move!" But he didn't. He turned toward the sound that was no longer beneath the floor. It was above. The creature broke through in a rush of dust and roar. A massive shadowed form coiled against the light, its breathing shaking the earth. Ethan stepped forward, shouting over the sound. "You don't have to feed on us," Laura screamed. "You can't reason with it." But the creature's voice came through Ethan's own throat, layered and deep. "It feeds because you built walls around it." Laura's tears streaked with dust. "Ethan, fight it." He looked back, voice breaking. "This is what it wants, to be seen." The creature's eyes mirrored his. The ground heaved again, shaking them apart as the breath turned into a violent wind. The ground split wide, a roar filling the cavern. Laura stumbled, sliding toward the pit. Ethan lunged, catching her arm. The creature's breath pulsed like a living heartbeat. Laura cried, "Let go!" He shook his head. "You go. I stay!" She screamed, gripping him tighter. "You'll die." He smiled faintly. Someone has to silence the breath. The creature shifted, massive claws dragging against stone. Ethan whispered, "Tell them it was never a monster." With one final push, he threw her upward as the floor collapsed beneath him. The light swallowed everything. Her scream echoed as the cavern sealed itself. Beneath the collapsing rock, Ethan stood within blinding light. The creature towered above, its form dissolving into shifting air. He shouted, "You're a part of me." The voice replied through every echo, "Then breathe with me." Ethan closed his eyes, chest rising and falling in sync. The cavern shook violently. Laura screamed from above, watching the ground pulse with light. Ethan whispered, If you want to live, take me. A final exhale thundered through the earth, bursting through the forest above. Trees bent, windows shattered miles away. The creature and Ethan became one luminous shape. Then silence swallowed everything. When the tremors stopped, the forest was still again. Dawn broke through the trees, soft and silent. Laura stumbled from the ruins, face streaked with ash and tears. The ground beneath her feet no longer breathed. It only rested. She knelt, whispering, "Ethan." The wind stirred gently, carrying a single echo of his voice. "It's quiet now." The morning sun touched the soil where the cabin once stood, golden light spreading through the mist. Laura placed her hand on the ground and felt one soft, steady breath. Peaceful, endless. For the first time, the floor no longer hid what was alive beneath. The wind slowed to a whisper. The ruins of the cabin smoldered beneath the dawn. Smoke weaving gently through the trees. Laura Caldwell stood in silence, her hands trembling as light broke through the mist. The forest, once alive with sound, now waited, breathing softly, calmly. Ash clung to her hair, her clothes heavy with damp earth. She walked to where Ethan Caldwell had vanished, her eyes hollow yet still searching. "You stopped it," she murmured. The ground under her boots was warm, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Laura knelt, her fingers brushing the soil. There was no terror left, only the echo of a man who gave himself to quiet the thing beneath. Hours passed as Laura sat beside the ruins, the wind brushing her hair like a ghostly hand. In her mind, fragments of Ethan's voice played. The words he said before he fell. "It wasn't evil," he had whispered. She closed her eyes, seeing flashes of their life together. His laughter, their quiet dinners, his obsession with the noises beneath the floor. "You were right," she said softly. The silence answered. For the first time, she didn't feel fear. She felt weight, the kind that comes after truth. The forest hummed faintly again, but now it sounded peaceful, as if breathing for him. As dusk approached, she heard footsteps behind her. Turning slowly, she saw Ethan Caldwell standing at the forest's edge, pale, calm, eyes glowing faintly like amber glass. Her breath caught. "You're not real," she whispered. He smiled gently. "I'm what remains." Time felt slower. Every heartbeat echoed between them. "Did it hurt?" she asked. Ethan shook his head. It listened. The forest sighed as leaves swayed around them. She stepped forward, reaching out, but he faded with the breeze. Only his voice stayed. "You don't have to be afraid anymore." Her tears fell into the soil, sinking where his footsteps vanished. Night settled with the sound of distant crickets. Laura lit a small fire beside the clearing, holding Harold Finch's old map in her hands. She traced the lines that once led them into darkness. "You tried to warn us," she whispered. The firelight flickered, and for a moment she imagined Harold sitting across from her, his tired eyes that knowing smile. "We all forget," his voice echoed faintly in memory, "but the earth never does." She folded the map, pressing it against her chest. "Then I'll remember," she said. A tear slipped free, catching the light like a star before it fell. Morning returned quietly. The forest floor was soft beneath her steps. Laura walked to the place where the soil had sealed over Ethan's final breath. She placed the folded map there, pressing it into the dirt. "For you," she said. The light through the trees shimmered like water, the air pulsing once in rhythm with her heart. She looked up, birds finally returning to the branches, singing faintly. A calm smile touched her lips. "It's at peace now," She turned, walking toward the road beyond the trees. Behind her, the ground rose slightly. One last breath, deep and steady, before falling silent again. The forest stood still. The sound of wind had softened into a slow rhythm, like an old heart finding peace. Laura Caldwell walked among the trees, tracing the edges of sunlight slipping through branches. The soil beneath her no longer trembled. It only breathed faintly, like the quiet pulse of the world. She whispered, "You're still here." Her voice barely broke the air. Every step she took left no echo, only warmth. Ethan Caldwell's name lingered in her thoughts, not as pain but as memory. She stopped, eyes closed, feeling the air rise once and fall. "Was it worth it?" she asked softly. The silence replied with gentle certainty, "Yes." Later that day, Laura reached the dirt road beyond the forest. She carried nothing but a folded photograph of the cabin. At its edge, she stopped and looked back once. The air shimmered faintly, as though exhaling. She whispered, "I'll keep your story alive." Her hand brushed the photo before she dropped it into a puddle. The image soaked and blurred until the faces faded together. She turned away and began walking toward the town. Each step carried less weight. The forest behind her breathed once more. Not heavy, not haunted, but alive. She didn't look back again. At dusk, a sound recorder clicked inside the ranger outpost. The red light blinked once, and Ethan Caldwell's voice played through static. "If you're hearing this, it means the breathing stopped." His tone was calm, peaceful. Laura stood listening, tears silent. It wasn't the creature that needed to rest. His voice continued. "It was us." The message ended with a long breath. Slow, fading. She smiled faintly. The tape whirred, then stopped. Outside, crickets sang. In that stillness, his words remained. They were not farewell. They were a reminder that silence could mean survival. Weeks later, the forest had begun to heal. New leaves spread across branches blackened by smoke. Children from the nearby town played near the creek, unaware of what had slept beneath. Laura watched them from a distance, a faint smile tracing her lips. "Let them forget," she murmured. She carried a journal now, pages filled with Ethan's drawings and her notes. The air was light again, untouched by fear. She looked toward the clearing and whispered, "Thank you." The wind answered softly, bending the grass. Time had moved forward, but the earth still remembered. So did she. That evening, Laura stood once more at the spot where the cabin had been. The trees whispered quietly, their branches heavy with new life. She placed her palm on the ground. "You're home now," she said. A faint warmth spread beneath her touch. The earth sighed once, a gentle, living breath, then went still. Laura looked toward the horizon where night met light. "Some things were never meant to die," she whispered. She turned away, her silhouette fading into dusk as the last sound beneath the forest floor became one final exhale, soft, eternal, human.